Hi guys, how you guys doing? I'm just gonna do some walk rant, but I think I want to do a music lesson out of this walk rant. If you're not interested, don't watch. You're good. But I'm interested in this lesson. I'd like to share it with you guys. I don't have a guitar in my hand, but I think I want it that way because the music I'm playing these days I'm passionate about. And as soon as I pick up a guitar, I want to actually play it. I don't just want to teach it. So the nearest you're going to get, I think, right now to a guitar lesson is me talking about it. But that's more than nothing. At least I'm going to explain some of my ideas and things, okay? Is that cool? Love you guys. Peace, love, and rock and roll. So I did the Yngwie's trilogy this morning, and I really got into it. The sound of it, the feel of it, the technique of it, and the theory of it, you know? So let's get into it. If you guys can follow me, if you want to follow me, let's discuss some of the things Yngwie does and whatever you can do in classical music that I can think of as well. So I started with I'll See the Light Tonight. That's off of Marching Out. He does an A, and actually it's an A Aeolian lick to start it. It's not A harmonic minor because there's a G in it, not a G sharp. But he does this quick, fast A Aeolian lick, and then he does like a dyad, an A power chord to an A power chord with a minor 6, replacing the 5th, which becomes an F major or F minor, but I'll call it F major over /A because A's in the root, and then back and forth between the A power chord and the F/A. Very rock and roll, heavy metal type fashioned lick. And then he does the A Aeolian lick again, and then back to the power chord lick, and it's played in the power chord thing is played in double bar fashion because the open A is being rung while the other second bar is played on the 4th and 3rd strings all the way up on the 7th and 9th and then sometimes 10th frets. So I've heard that's called a double bar when you do a bar chord, but yet have another note below it, as if that's a bigger bar. So there's that. And then he does a G sharp diminished lick, but it's played in tritones up minor thirds. Da 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 da. You gotta be careful you play those right, or you sound like crap. But it's really just another way of phrasing a G sharp diminished 7th lick, which is in the A harmonic minor scale, you know. And then he goes into the choruses. And I'm not sure what the actual key you would call the choruses to be. You could call it whatever you want, I guess. It depends on how you look at it. But he goes to B minor instead of the opening riff is an A. But then he goes to B minor and then plays E major and then plays B minor. Then he plays G major and then he plays E major. Like I said. G major, then back to B minor, and then back to E major, then a slip from E major to what I think is A major. It's a 5-1 in A major, but then he goes from A major to E major to finish the lick. So that's the progression for the choruses in I'll See the Light Tonight. That's what I hear on the record. I'm not sure what key that's in or why he chose those chords right now, but it sounds good to me, you know. And then the main song is nothing but those two parts back and forth, you know. The verses, of course, being the A power chord thing, and then the choruses being the thing that starts with B minor. But then it's interesting how he does the solo, and I like this. I'm gonna go into this. Join me if you like. He suddenly instead of going into the chorus because he just finishes instead of going into the verses, he plays the chorus, which is the A thing, and then he starts up a thing that's going to be interesting. He does a pedal note thing for the lead and for the chords. I'll tell you what he's doing. Best guess is in A minor, the whole thing. But it's interesting how he plays it. He does D minor, D as in dog. And that's the 4 chord in A minor, but that's cool. You can do that. He plays D minor, then C major, which is the 3 chord, but it implies A Aeolian, not A harmonic minor. and then E major to A minor, which is the 5-1 in A harmonic minor. And he does a beautiful pedal point lick on top of that. I won't get into the lick right now. It's just notes that are in the A harmonic minor scale. Then he repeats that again. He does D minor, C major, E major, A minor again. And then just to mix it up a little bit, he plays E major to A minor, and then goes from G major to C major. That's the 5-1 in the relative major key to A minor, which is C major. In this case, 5-1 in C major is G major to C major, which he does. And that concludes the pedal point section, pedal tone section, which I think is really cool. I learned it note for note, dude. I mean, I just went over it with a CD and the whole thing, you know. But all the pedal notes are in A harmonic minor scale notes. So then he does the shred part of the solo, considering that's not this. The part I just said is more melodic. It's more planned out. But then he does a more shredding improvised solo. He goes up to the key of B harmonic minor and plays riffs out in B harmonic minor, which is up a whole step from the key of the song. And then he goes up another whole step from there to C sharp harmonic minor. It's up another whole step, and then he goes to E, but he doesn't go to E harmonic minor. He goes to E Phrygian dominant, and that's interesting. I like that because E Phrygian dominant is the relative Phrygian to A harmonic minor, which the song is in. So then he does the E Phrygian dominant solo, and then it's right back to the song because E is the dominant chord in A, and the song's in A minor. So the E Phrygian dominant sets it up to go back to the chorus riff that starts the song, and then he does the verses again one more time with the B minor thing, and then he goes back to the choruses, the opening part, and then just ends the song like that. So very interesting. I like it. Questions there? I don't think so. I think it's pretty straightforward. I kind of like it though. And then I did Black Star, which has an interesting acoustic opening to the song. You know, it's in E minor, but the opening is B major, which is the 5 chord in E minor, and then it goes to an E minor chord, and then it goes to a B major sus4 chord, and then it goes to an A major sus sharp 4 chord, which is interesting. That temporarily makes it E melodic minor, because E melodic minor has an A major and a B major in it, because A major has the major 6 and A major has the major 6 and B major has the major 7th, and the melodic minor scale is basically a minor scale with a major 6 and a major 7th, or conversely a major scale with a flatted third, because a major scale has a major scale has a major 6 and a major 7th. So by flatting the third of a major scale, you also get a melodic minor scale. So looking at it, then he plays an E minor with a G at the bass. That's interesting. I like that sound. It's a cool little chord. It's an A minor open chord, except that you have a G at the bass at the 6th string instead of E, which 3rd fret of the 6th string, which I think sounds good. And then he climbs up on the high E string to F sharp, and then to G, and then he keeps going, climbing up to, because he does an E major chord, which has a G sharp. So he's got a kind of chromatic a little bit there. The E major has a G sharp, and then he plays an A minor, which temporarily makes the song in A minor, because you had an E major, like I just said. An E major to A minor is 5-1 in A minor. So it's E major to A minor, and then a melodic lick there, and then he's going to play like he's in the key of B, because he plays F sharp major. He plays F sharp major that leads to the notes on the 6th string, the notes A sharp, B, and C sharp. So it's like tonicizing the B note, because the F sharp major is the 5 chord in B, and he hints at B by playing A sharp, B, and C sharp. But instead of playing an actual B and staying on that tonic, he just kind of plays a B major to A major thing that puts him back in A minor, or at least E melodic minor. And then it's a bunch of harmonic stuff that's cool. Those are just notes, you can work it out. So then that opens the tune, he starts the tune. So the tune starts with an E minor drone, and then the E minor goes to C major over E, or you could say C major / E, because E's still in the bass, but it's a C major chord at some points. And then back to the E minor, to the C major, to the E minor, to the C major, all over E. And you just solo whatever you want to do. Play E harmonic minor scale licks. And then it goes to E Phrygian dominant. He likes to go from E harmonic minor, let's say, to E Phrygian dominant. He likes to go from harmonic minor on a certain key to Phrygian dominant, or backwards from Phrygian dominant to harmonic minor on the same root. So he's on E Phrygian dominant for a while, and then he goes back to E harmonic minor. Then he does something in A harmonic minor, just as a bridge. It's just a bridge part, and then back to E Phrygian dominant, and then E harmonic minor, E Phrygian dominant, and ends on E harmonic minor. And all it is just a bunch of notes over all those chords. Just make sure you play the notes that sound good to you, that sound beautiful, and the notes that are in the right key to fit the chords that you're on at the time. A Phrygian dominant mode is just a Phrygian with a major third. A harmonic minor is just an Aeolian with a raised seventh or major seventh. And an Aeolian mode is just the 4/6 mode of major scale, So there's that. Now the funnest one of all these is the next one coming up, which is Far Beyond the Sun, which I also did. I enjoy all of them though. Without the other two, Far Beyond the Sun would have sounded cool, so what? But with that intro, Far Beyond the Sun sounds pretty cool at this point, I think. It's an F sharp harmonic minor. So it's an opening notes lick that implies F sharp harmonic minor, but then the notes imply A major, which is the relative major to F sharp harmonic minor. And then there's some riffing that basically takes it back to F sharp harmonic minor. You can learn those notes. Notes are easy. Google it, learn it, or tab it, whatever you want. And then it goes, then he lands back on F sharp harmonic minor via the E sharp diminished seventh, which I could call F diminished seventh. I'm going to call it F diminished seventh just for simplicity, but it's actually E sharp because it's the major seventh degree of the F sharp minor scale. F sharp minor doesn't have a major seventh degree naturally, but when you raise it, the Aeolian mode raise the seventh to a major seventh, you get a natural major seventh. You get a major seventh in a minor key. So I'm going to call that F instead of E sharp for simplicity. So the lick goes into F diminished seventh, because that's the leading tone lick in F sharp harmonic minor. And then there's a cool riff in F sharp Aeolian, or you could call it F sharp harmonic minor, one of the two, kind of chugging on the low strings. Cool riff. Then it's more melody. He does some trills, but they're interesting. Every trill is a half step below the note that he's trilling, and every note is the notes of an F sharp minor triad, arpeggio. So he plays F sharp, the note F sharp with a half step below, then the note A, and then with a half step below trilling, and then the note C sharp with the note half step below trilling, and then he does that in actually another octave again, and then he does it on an octave higher than that. So it covers. He does it in three different octaves. So that's cool. You got to know where your notes are on the neck. You know what I mean? You got to know. You can't sit there and think about it too much. You kind of got to know what your notes are. It's helpful. Otherwise, you're going to be like, "What am I doing?" And then there's a fast lick in F sharp harmonic minor, and it's cool. You can learn it, tab it, whatever. But playing it good is cool. And then I love this next part. It's the part that goes. I love that. It's basically B minor. It's in F sharp minor, F sharp harmonic minor. So it's B minor, which is the 4 chord in F sharp minor. Then he plays the C sharp major to F sharp minor, which is the 5 to 1. But he doesn't really. Let me restate that. He plays B minor, and then he plays C sharp major and holds it there for a second. So you get the effect of the 4 chord in F sharp minor to the 5 chord in F sharp minor, kind of by themselves. And then he says the second phrase is F sharp minor to E major to A major. I love that. It's the F sharp minor is the tonic chord in F sharp minor, of course. But then he plays E major to A major, which tonicizes the A major. The key is A major, which is the relative major key to F sharp minor. So I think it's all really pretty. So you have B minor to B minor to C sharp major, then F sharp minor to E major to A major, and then that's all played over that. You play like that, and then the second time he does it, he does B minor to C sharp major to just F sharp minor, ends it there. So then he does it. Then he goes into a F sharp minor lick. So I like that part. I like other parts of the song. The solos, I'm going to get into some of my own ideas after I finish with this Yngwie analysis. So that's basically what's going on in the tune. Then it's time for the solo, and he starts the solo in C sharp Phrygian dominant, which is the relative Phrygian dominant to F sharp harmonic minor. Yeah. So it's like you could say you're an F sharp harmonic minor, but you're playing it over C sharp, which makes it C sharp Phrygian dominant. Okay, then he raises it a whole step to D sharp Phrygian dominant. Well, that's the relative Phrygian to G sharp harmonic minor. So it's really like you're playing in G sharp harmonic minor, but you're not, because you're playing D sharp Phrygian dominant, which is a whole step up from C sharp Phrygian dominant, which he started the solo with. Then he goes a perfect fifth down from all that. Just go down a fifth. Now you're at G sharp Phrygian dominant, which is the relative Phrygian to C sharp harmonic minor. So voila, we just introduced the key C sharp harmonic minor, but via playing G sharp Phrygian dominant. And then that ends the solos. I'm not trying to play the keyboard solo. I'm not trying to give space to the keyboard because I don't have a keyboard. I just play all the solos I'm going to play. But in the record, Yngwie trades off with the keyboard player. Jens Johansson, or is it Johannes Johansson? Oh, something like that. Something Johansson. Yen something. I'm not sure which one is the drummer. One's the drummer, one's the keyboardist. And they're both, Johansson is the last name. So anyway, trade off there, but I just play the solos myself. But then suddenly, for some reason, since you played G sharp Phrygian dominant, you introduce the key of C sharp harmonic minor, which Yngwie kind of runs with. He runs with that. So then he starts playing these licks in C sharp harmonic minor. The key of the song just changed from F sharp to C sharp, in other words. Cool licks. He does some power chord licks. He plays C sharp minor to B major to A major to E major to B major to F sharp major to B major to C minor again. So just standard rock, heavy metal progression, but still sounds cool. It sounds cool to me. I love it. Make sure I said those notes right. So it's C sharp to minor to B minor to A minor to E major, and then to B major to G sharp major to B major to C sharp minor. I hope I said that right the first time, because that's what it really is. It's C sharp minor to B minor to C sharp minor to B major to A major to E major to B major to G sharp major to C sharp minor. That's how it is. I don't know what I said the first time right now, but I hope I said that correctly, because there you go. And then he starts shredding out in C sharp harmonic minor, which is cool. And So he's shredding in C sharp harmonic minor. And here's where it gets interesting. The rest of this talk is going to be interesting from now on. The rest of that, so far I've just quoted what Ingrid did and explained it, but here I'm going to get creative a little bit. So he's in C sharp harmonic minor, soloing, shredding in C sharp harmonic minor. And the chords he's soloing over are simple, basically C minor, B major, A major, G sharp major. So that's the typical progression. C sharp minor, B major, A major, G sharp major. And he's just soloing like there's no problem, but then he throws a monkey in the wrench. He plays a G diminished seventh chord. Well, that immediately tonicizes the G sharp Phrygian as a G sharp Aeolian, because when you play a G Phrygian diminished seventh, that is the seventh. That is the leading tone chord to G sharp harmonic minor. So he just changed from the G sharp Phrygian, which is the 5 of the C sharp minor that he's in, to suddenly become G sharp harmonic minor itself. So now he's temporarily in G sharp harmonic minor, but G sharp harmonic minor, if you're still in C sharp, which he's acting like he is a C sharp Dorian sharp 4 scale. So actually he's in C sharp Dorian sharp 4, which is so badass to me. Just by playing, because there's a G diminished seventh in C sharp Dorian sharp 4, because the Dorian sharp 4 has a diminished seventh triad on the root, and the root, if it's a diminished seventh arpeggio on the root, which is C sharp, it also contains a G note, which makes, since the diminished seventh arpeggio is symmetrical, gives you a G diminished seventh chord or arpeggio. So he just instantly went to A for Dorian sharp 4 by playing the G diminished seventh, and then he doesn't stay there very long, because he slides back up to G sharp major, and now he's back into C sharp harmonic minor, because once he slides up to G sharp major, the G sharp major again becomes the 5 chord in C sharp harmonic minor, and then he does that whole thing I just said one more time, so you get to hear that G diminished seventh again. So he's done most of the work before the song by this point. But then he's still shredding in C sharp Phrygian, C sharp harmonic minor, and he's shredding, and then he does a cool lick at the end where he does a C sharp minor triad to a D sharp diminished seventh triad. I really like that. C sharp minor triad to D sharp diminished seventh to C sharp minor to D sharp diminished seventh, back and forth, and then finally the C sharp minor chord gets extended into the next octave down, and then he plays, to end it, he plays a C sharp minor to B major to E major. C sharp minor is just C sharp, one chord in C sharp minor, that's the key you're in. But then he goes to B major to E major, which is the 5 to 1 in E major. E major key to C sharp. So he did another trick where he goes to the relative major and plays the 5-1 in the relative major, and that's how he ends the song on an E major chord, which is the relative major key to C sharp harmonic minor, which the song became, because it started at F sharp harmonic minor, but changed to C sharp at the end, and then ends on E major, which is the relative major to C sharp harmonic minor. Whew. That finishes the whole kit and caboodle of everything I did today on the Ingrid Malmsteen trilogy. I made a few goofs, but whatever. I'm not perfect. I'm only cool. Don't judge me. I wasn't born perfect. I was only born awesome. Whatever. I got that from a coffee cup. I didn't make that up myself. That's why I don't post it, because I only post original stuff. But if I made it up, I post it. If someone else did, that's theirs, I suppose. Anyway, but now what's Jimmy think? What's some tricks that Jimmy has in mind, or some ideas that Jimmy thinks about all this? I think that the diminished seventh arpeggio is what I want to do a lesson on, as far as my original lesson here. So you see, there's 4 notes in a diminished seventh arpeggio, and they're symmetrical. So you only have 3 different diminished seventh arpeggios in 12-tone music. So there's only 3 of them, and they only really appear in the harmonic minor scale as far as music goes, because they appear in the harmonic major scale. But let's just eliminate that for now and worry about that later. And there's no diminished seventh arpeggio in a major scale, and there's no diminished seventh arpeggio in a melodic minor scale. So there's only diminished seventh in the harmonic major scale and the harmonic minor scale. Let's do harmonic minor for now. So there's 3 diminished sevenths arpeggios in music, and so so what do you do with that? Since you basically have a harmonic minor scale to work from. Well, here's my idea. There's 3 minor modes in music. There's Aeolian mode, which is minor. There's Dorian mode, which is minor, and there's Phrygian mode, which is minor. So let's make those 3 minor scales. Minor modes. Let's make those 3 minor modes altered so that they each have a diminished seventh and see what we get. So, starting with, we'll be in the key E just for because I said so. Let's say we're in E minor. E. Let's do E Aeolian first. Well, E Aeolian has a D sharp diminished seventh, so the diminished seventh is a half step below the root. So, if you want to play the diminished seventh in a minor key in Aeolian mode, just play down half step from the key, the root of the Aeolian mode. There's that. But that's only one of the 3 possible modes. If you play an E Dorian, suddenly now you have. If you have an E Dorian, you suddenly have in E Dorian. If you sharp the 4, because that's the note you sharp in Dorian, you have Dorian sharp 4, which has a diminished seventh arpeggio on the actual root of the mode, which is D. So if you want to play a diminished seventh in a Dorian sharp 4 scale, just play a diminished seventh on the root of the Dorian sharp 4. So you went up a half step from the Aeolian mode, because in the Aeolian mode you played it at major seventh. You played the diminished seventh arpeggio on the major seventh degree, but for Dorian sharp 4 you play the diminished seventh on the root. Only one more example. If you're playing E Phrygian and you make it a diminished seventh, you have E Phrygian dominant. In this case, you have an E Phrygian, but with a major third. And in this case, the diminished seventh is on the. You could technically say it's on the major third, but that's the same as it being on the flat 7th degree. So in other words, if you have E Phrygian dominant, you play. You have a diminished seventh on the note D, the minor seventh. Of the minor 7th degree of the E tonic. So when you played E Phrygian dominant, your diminished 7th arpeggio went down a half step from where it is with the Aeolian harmonic minor scale. Because with the Aeolian harmonic minor, you played the diminished 7th on the major 7th. With the Phrygian dominant mode, you play the diminished 7th on the minor 7th. So it went down a half step. So that's the 3 possibilities. If you're playing Aeolian, you raise the 7th and get you get a harmonic minor, which gives you a diminished 7th on the major 7th degree. If you're in Dorian and you make it diminished, you play Dorian sharp 4, which gives you a diminished 7th on the actual tonic of the note that the mode is in. And if you play Phrygian and you want to make a diminished 7th, you play Phrygian dominant, which gives you a diminished 7th chord on the minor 7th degree, of the Phrygian note, the note that the Phrygian mode is on. So it's a chromatic slither. Middle ground is Aeolian, which is harmonic minor. That's a half step down from the root. Dorian is up, so that's diminished 7th on the root. Phrygian is down, so that's diminished 7th on the flat 7, and back up. Aeolian is harmonic minor, which is diminished 7th on the major 7th. So they're all related within a half step. Aeolian's at the center. Dorian is up a half step with the diminished 7th, and Phrygian is down a half step with the diminished 7th. And interestingly, if you go from Phrygian to Dorian, you go up a whole step with the diminished 7th root. And that's interesting because Dorian and Phrygian are a whole step apart in the modes. And yes, if you start on a Phrygian and go up two half steps or a whole step, you get a Dorian mode where you started. So playing Dorian, changing to Dorian. When you start on Phrygian, you and then go to Dorian, you you went up 2 notes sharp, because Phrygian has two flats more than Dorian, and Dorian has 2 sharps more than Phrygian. So it's a whole step relation, and that's 2 half steps. So as it sounds, if you go down to the minor 7th with your diminished 7th, you get that's for Phrygian. If you go back up a whole step from there to putting a diminished 7th on the root, you're now at Dorian, which is whole step of, which means your diminished 7th went up a whole step, as Dorian is 2 sharps more than Phrygian, and Dorian is 1 sharp more than Aeolian. Phrygian is 1 flat more than Aeolian, and again, Dorian is 2 sharps more than Phrygian, and Phrygian is 2 flats more than Dorian. Have a guys, peace, love, and rock and roll.